Praise the Lord. Welcome to another Keycloak tutorial. Today we're going to learn about creating a user using the REST API, the administration REST API. So the documentation is found on the, if you come to the Keycloak site, then under docs, administration REST API. So we're going to use one of these endpoints to create a user that can authenticate using Keycloak for your application. So without further ado, I have a local installation of Keycloak that I'll get to shortly. You need to log into the administration console because we need to use there are two ways to authenticate in order for you to get a token that you use to call the administration REST API endpoints. You can either use the administrator username and password using the password grant, or you can use the client credentials grant, and the latter is preferable, where you just generate a client secret and you use that to authenticate and get a token that you use to call the API endpoints. So we will look at the latter. So you need to log into the administration console using your admin credentials on the UI. I have two realms here. I have the IuserTech realm and the master realm. You have to not pay attention to this. You have to use the master realm in order for you to get the right privileges and the right client secret that will be used later on. If you use another realm, you won't be able to access the administration REST API endpoints. So select, if you have more than one realm, select the master realm. Then under clients in the master realm, you have a number of clients, and one of them is the admin CLI open auth 2 client. Click on that client. We want to give that client some abilities for us to be able to generate a client secret. I've already enabled services account, but usually by default it's not enabled. So in your installation it won't be enabled if you've never enabled it before. So enable it from off to on, toggle the switch to on. And then the other thing that you have to do, before you do this, you have to change the access type from public to confidential. By default it's public, so change it to confidential. After, to be like this, public, and you won't be able to see the services account, so you have to change it to confidential. Then you're able to see these other options. Then enable the services account. After enabling the services account, up here we have a number of tabs. One of the tabs that will be visible once you've enabled the services accounts, it will be the credentials tab. Before you do that, it's not visible. You can't see the credentials tab. So click on the credentials tab. We have our client secret here already generated for us. If you want to regenerate it, you can click on regenerate. So this is the character string that you're interested in, that we'll be using later on, as I will show you. So get this string here, copy it somewhere. Then the other thing that you have to do after doing these configurations, come to service account roles, the last tab, service account roles, and then under client roles, look for the client realm. So when you're in the master realm, your other realms will be seen as client realms, or they'll be seen under clients. So my other realm is called IuserTech. Keycloak appends the realm there. So select that realm under which you want to create the users. Before enabling the roles that I'm going to enable now, this is how it looks. But before you're able to create a client, you have to have certain permissions or roles, and one of them is the manage users. So you have to add this role to your rem. You have to add the manage users role, and I added the other roles like query users. I needed querying users, and then the other one was view users. Yeah, so just add any number of roles according to your needs. There are a couple of them here, but these for me were enough. Yes, so I think we are done with the settings and the configurations that we need. This is enough. We don't need to do anything inside your other rem where you want the users. So we'll now just jump over to our testing ground, and we are using Postman to do our tests. So before you create a user, like I said earlier, you need a token. Yes, you need a token. How do I clear this? Okay, sorry about that. I wanted to clear. Let me go back to my home. I wanted to clear the console, but it's opening up other stuff. So let's quickly jump back to where I were. Okay, so we need to generate a token before we can call the API to create users. So that's what's happening in this first request. So this request goes to this URL, this endpoint. Of course, up to here depending on which Keycloak installation. The latter Keycloak installations by default don't have the auth context. I'm using the latest Keycloak version, but I enabled this. You can enable this within the configs of Keycloak, but that's not for today. So but this is the rest of the URL that we'll be calling. It's under rems master. This has to be master, the master rem. Protocol OpenID connect. I'm using OpenID connect, not SAML. Then token, and then of course the rest of this will be your domain or IP or whatever it is. So yeah, take note of that. Then it's URL encoded, because we need to encode within the URL certain key value pairs. So what you need is the client ID, and for client ID the value is admin CLI. Client ID admin CLI. Then for the client secret is the secret that we copied earlier, if you remember. The secret that we copied from, let's run there very fast. Under credentials, this one here. So this is the secret you put here, and then the grant type is client credentials, just the way it is. So once all this is okay, then you should have no problem generating a token. Yeah, so a token is generated for us here. So you can now use this token to call any of the REST endpoints, the REST API endpoints. So for today we are creating a user. This is the payload for the user. You can look it up. There are other, other attributes and within the payload that you can add, but for our purpose we just kept it simple. So we are creating the user and the credentials at the same time. You could just decide to create just the user without all this, and then update the user with the credentials. But I wanted to do this in one go, so that's why I have my credentials here. The credentials have to be, the password has to be in plain text. So that's why it's very important that you're using HTTPS, because the password is going in plain text. So once your payload is in there and looks okay, the other part is you adding your bearer token. So I selected bearer token and I added my token here. You can copy the token, then come to authorization, the token that you created in the first step, come to authorization and just add it there, and you're done. You send your request. Okay, let's do that. This is our body. Looks good. Just a second. Let's generate the token again. Authorization. A user exists with the same username. Let's just change this username to let's add something like that. Same email. Okay, let's change that as well. Yes, so once your user is created, you'll have a 201 as the returned response or status, meaning everything was successful. So earlier on under authorization, you saw something like this. This is because I didn't have to copy my token manual to come and paste it here. I had a simple script under tests, this simple script that sets up the environmental variable in Postman called refresh token. So when I run this, generates for me the token and also inserts it within an environmental variable called refresh token, which I'm able to access here. So that's why you were seeing this like this here. So that's pretty much it. That's how you create a user with Keycloak. Thank you for listening to me, and God bless you.